Hello everybody, how is it going? Welcome to another video of tutorial series learning Python from scratch. In previous videos we learned about basic introduction of Python, and also we learned about how variables are defined, or what are different types of variables we use in Python. And we also learned how to print the Python, print any characters or numbers in Python, some arithmetic operators, and also we learned about string concatenation. And today we will continue our lesson with another few topics in Python. So I'd just like to create different projects for each day so that it's easier for you to understand what we learned each day, and just to make sure you follow the GitHub account in the description link to get the source code of whatever we did each day. So let me just create a new project. I'll just call it day 3. Create. Okay. So my new project is ready. Let me just create a file over here. We can just create Python file. Let's name the file as let's say run.py. We don't need to enter py because it's already Python file. Okay, so we have run.py over here. So in previous videos we learned like what are different types of variables, and one of the types we learned was Boolean, so which returned either true or false. And the most common place where we use Boolean is in conditions. So if something is true, perform something, and if something is false, we go to another block or do something else. So each and every programming language has their own way to use if-else condition. So such conditions, like if something is true or false, are generally handled in programming languages with if-else statement. So we just I just wanted to go through those different ways of writing if-else in Python. So let's say we have a variable that we call like a. Okay, so if a is, let's say, true. Okay, so let's say if a, okay, so a is true, we generally write capital T in Python. And let's say if b is false. Okay, now let us try to go through some let's say if else using these two variables. So I'll say if a. Okay, so if a here, since a is true, it should return me true. And generally in other programming languages we use curly braces like this to denote that this is within if statement or else statement. But in Python we don't use curly braces. We use a colon and with proper indents. So if you see here, it gives us a tab or 4 spaces. Okay, that's the same thing. So generally if you use any IDE that supports Python codes, it will automatically provide you a tab over there. So which means whatever code we write over here like this, which is in this indent of a tab, that all belongs to this if statement. So this is how Python understands that what is the block of which function or which condition. So here we can see these 3 lines are in the proper indent. So it will let's say it will assume that these 3 lines is a block of this if statement. Let me demonstrate to you. So if I'm saying that if a, which means if this something inside the bracket is true, so a is true, so it should go inside. Let me just print something. Print a is true. Okay, let me also print a is not false. Okay, let me just print these 2 statements over here. So if a is true, I just wanted to print these 2 statements. So let me just go to run and run. Okay, so it says a is true and a is not false. Now let me just add let's say something over here that says print and let's make it a separator. So let me just call it separator. Okay, so this separator should come between a and a is true and a is not false. Let me just save it and run it again. You can see the separator is over here. Now let me just remove the indent of print. Okay, now this should give me some error if I'm not wrong. So you can see that print over here has an indent but does not have parent block like this print has, right? So if you see this print, it has a parent block with a colon that is representing that this print belongs to this if. So after this, the indent is again gone, so no matter if a is true or false, this will print out. But this print over here, if you see, it does not have a like a proper indent over here. That is why I mean, this has an indent, but it does not have any parent block, so that's why this is showing an error. So let me just comment out this line for a while and let me demonstrate to you something. So if I go over here and just run this, we can see there are two lines getting printed. The first one is a is true and the second one is separator. Okay, now let me add b over here. Since b is false, so it should not go to the block of b. So if you see, we can just see separator, which means since the indent which was like this before is gone, now this is no more a part of this if statement because the indent is gone. That is why, since b is false, the first part and this block is not getting printed because b is false. But this part, since it is not something that is inside if, so that no matter what, it gets printed. So we only get a separator over here. But if we have all these three lines inside if, save it and run it, nothing gets printed because all of these three lines are part of this if statement. So I hope you understood how like blocks are controlled using colon and indent in Python, unlike other languages where we generally use curly braces. Okay, so let us also understand something more besides if, that is else statement. So if b, print a, b is okay. If b, which means it's false, so it will not get inside. Let's say b is true. So if b, which means if b is true, then this line should get printed. But I would like to say else. Now since we are having a new column over here, so it should automatically understand that we are about to start a new block, and because of this indent is not over here, it assumes that this else is not a part of this parent if, but rather a separate block. Okay, I should say print b is false. So here we can see b is false, so it will not get inside if. So whatever be the opposite condition of this if, which means b, if b is true, which means else means if b is false. So if b is not true, which means it is false, it gets inside else statement and it prints b is false. So whatever be the value of b, something gets printed, either true or false. So since here b is false, it will not get inside if and it will print b is false. Let's try that. We can see it says b is false. Okay, now let us try something different. Let's take input from users and examine if that is true or false, or let's say we can compare like arithmetic operators. We can add those and create our own mini calculator which adds to numbers that we get from the user, and maybe add those, subtract those, or multiply those. So let's try something like that. So let me just comment out all of these lines so that you can use it for reference. Oh, I missed one. Let me just print out all the lines. Okay, so let me start from here. So now, since these were the variables that we defined ourselves, but we can also get input from the users dynamically and assign it to the variable. And in Python, to do that, to take the input from the user, it's really easy. We just use a function named input. So let's say I want to take something from user, then I just say input write something. Okay, let's save it and run it. You will see it will let us write something in the console like this. Okay, and you can see the question and answer is in the same line, and we can separate those by just adding a new line at the end of this statement by saying backslash and n. So backslash and n is something that takes the cursor to the new line. So let's try this now. Okay, now when I try to write something here, I can even write below the question. So write something. Now I can write something over here. So this slash n would just add an extra line over here, so you can either click over here or you can also click below. So if you just click below, you can get to the new line. So that's something really simple. So what I want to do is I want to take the input from users just like this and store it to the variable, and in order to do that, we can just create a variable. Let's say we have used a and b, so I would like to create a new variable called c. So whatever user types in, I just wanted to store those characters or any numbers to this variable c. Now let's make it something practical. So what we can do is we can just ask for two different numbers and try to add those. Let's do that. So enter number, or let's say enter first number. Okay, so once the user has entered first number, it gets into the variable c. And let's do the same and ask for another number and place it inside d. Insert second number. And what I want to do is I want to add these two numbers. So before getting into a new topic, I just want to demonstrate to you, if we just add these two inputs, what happens. So let me just create a new variable called e and add c with d, and I just want to print this variable e. Okay, e. So what I'm doing basically is I'm asking for an input with the user, placing it inside c, and I'm asking for another number with the user and placing it inside d. I just want to add these two numbers and print it. But would it really add these two numbers? Let's see. Let's run this, and we can see it says enter first number. Let me just enter 3. Enter second number. I would again enter 3. Let's see what happens. It says 33. The output is 33. Why is it 33? Because though we are entering a number, anything provided by user through console is assumed to be a string or a character rather than number. So in order to change these characters, which are actually number, into a real number, what we can do is we can just parse it. So there comes the concept of parsing. So if we want to parse a number which is which is inside the code, or which is behaving like a string, we can just say int. I want to convert this number to int, so I'm converting c to int. Similarly, I would also like to convert d to int. Int stands for integer. Now if I save it and try to run it, it should convert 3 to an integer and also d to an integer, add these two and print it. So let's see. It asks for the first number, I just enter 3. Ask for second number, I just enter 3. Now it should give me 6. So now here we understood by default, whenever we enter something to console, it assumes it to be a string rather than number, even if the number is being inserted by the user. So in order to convert that number to integer, we just add int over here. Similarly, we can convert it to float by just adding a function float in front of that. But before this, let's get a number from a user, enter the number, and we just examine if that is odd or even. Let's do that. So let me just comment out these lines for you. Okay, so let me create another variable called f, and let's ask an input and say enter the number. Okay, and we get take that number and we change it into an integer instead of a string, but because by default, as we discussed, it gives the output or input, the whatever user inputs, it is assumed to be a string. So I'll just say f equals to integer f. So what I'm doing is I'm replacing the old value of f with a new value and parsing the new old value, that is string, into a number using this and assigning this to the same variable f. So now f is no more a string, rather it is an integer. Now what I want to examine is if f is an even number or an odd number. So what I say is, now as we learned yesterday in previous video, that there is an operator called modulus that gives us the remainder of two different, whenever some number is divided by another number. So we know that any even number, when it is divided by 2, the remainder is 0. So because if we divide 4 by 2, 2 times 2 is 4, the remainder is 0. But if we divide any number with 2 and the remainder is 1, then in that case that is an odd number, right? So let's do that. So if I say if, no, that's not this. So after the number is we got the number from the user and converted it to int, I would just want to check if the number f, when divided by 2, gives us the remainder of 0. This means this is an even number. So I can just add a colon over here, give an indent, and say print the number is even. And if it is not divisible by 2 and the remainder is not 0, this means the number is odd. So what I can say is, I can just write in else, I can say print the number is odd. Okay, so let's try this. So it says enter the number. I can just since I don't have /n over here, let me say this and run it again. So enter a number, I can say 3. So since 3 is not even, it should say me the number is odd, and you can see it says the number is odd. Now what I want to do is, let me just comment out this first. Let's create another two, let's ask another 2 variables, or let's say 2 numbers from the user, and we would discuss about one more thing besides if else. So I want to ask 2 numbers from the user and just call it g and h. So g and h, so in the first number and in the second number. Now what I want to do is I want to compare these 2 numbers to see which one is greater, and I would just like to say, and this is greater than this. Okay, so I have g, I have h. Let us convert both of these variables to integer. So in order to do that, we just say g equals to integer g, and h equals to integer h. Yeah, so now what I can do is I can just compare, say if g is greater than h, I can say that print, I would like to concatenate number with the string, the value g. So I can say g plus is greater than h, right? So if g is greater than that, since g and h are variables, I'm using it as this. So I just like to give a space. So g, whatever the value of g, is greater than whatever value of h. So if g is greater than h, otherwise what I can say is else print h is greater than g. Right, so then g, save it, run it. Let's ask for the number. I'll say 3. ask for the number, I say 4. So it should say that 4 is greater than 3. Okay, since h is greater than g, so it does not get inside this if statement and gets to the else, and it says h is greater than g, which means 4 is greater than 3. So let's run this, enter, and it says so. Just like we converted our string to integer using this, now this is a number. Okay, so this is an integer and it cannot be concatenated with a string until and unless we convert this to a string or a character. So in order to convert this g and h to a string, what we do is we just use a normal function, just like int. We use str, that's for string. So we are trying to convert g to a string and also h to a string, so I'll just wrap it by str like this, and also here. Okay, so str, close the bracket, str, close the bracket. So now if you try to print this again, now it should give us a proper result. So let's say 3, enter the second number 4, so it says 4 is greater than 3. Let's try the reverse, run it again. Into the first number 4, let's say the first number is greater than the second number, which is 4, so answer is 7 is greater than 4. What if I type in the first number is 3 and the second number is 3 again? It says 3 is greater than 3. That's something wrong. So what I want to do is I want to introduce a new condition that handles if both of the statement, if one is not true, it is not necessary that the other should also be not true, like in this case. So if 3 is not greater than 3, which does not mean else 3 is greater than 3. So there should be something that says if a number is greater than another number, it says this is greater than this, or it says this is greater than that, or it says both of them are equal. So what I can do is, here I can have another statement that says else if, which is represented by elif in Python, and now we can have a curly bracket over here and say if h is greater than g. In that case, h is greater than g. Otherwise, you can say else print both the numbers are equal. Okay, so I'm saying basically if g is greater than h, then print g is greater than h. If h is greater than g, then print h is greater than g. If both of these statements are not true, which that means both of them, the numbers should be equal. Now let's save it, try to run it again. Let's type in 3, let's type in 4, and see 4 is greater than 3. Now let's try to type something equal. The first number is 3 and the second number is 3, and it says both the numbers are equal. So here we see we introduced a new let's say condition which is else if. So we can also have the nested if, like if let's say instead of doing it this way, I'll just copy this and comment this line first, these lines, and have another. I'll just modify the same thing. So what I can do, instead of using if else like this, what I can say is if g is greater than h, I can say if g is greater than or equal to h. In that case, I can have another if over here that says if g is equal to h. So here we can see we are checking the conditions using nested if. So you can see the g can either be greater than or equal to h. So if that is equal to, then I'd say both of the numbers are equal. I'll copy it from here and say both of the numbers are equal. Otherwise, which means else, I would say g is greater than h. which is here. So g is only greater than h if g is greater than equals to h, and if g is not equals to h. In that case it will get inside else. So here we can see inside one if that we have another pair of if else statement, and if both of these statements are not true, okay, so if both of these statements are not true, which means if g is not greater than h and not equals to h, which means g should be smaller than h. So in that case I'll just copy this and paste it over here and say print h is greater than g. So this was another way of solving the same problem, but here I've used elif, which means else if. We could also have done something called nested if, where we have if and else inside parent if. Let's try this. It says enter the first number. Let me type in 4 and type in 3. It should say 4 is greater than 3. Let me run this again. Let me type in 4, another number 4. It says both the numbers are equal. So both the way we have handled checking or comparing two numbers. It can be either equal to or greater than or lesser than. So that's it for today. Today we learned about if else conditions. We also learned how we handle Boolean variables inside if. We also learned how to take the input from users, convert that input into integer, and again convert that input into, let's say, string. We also learned about if else conditions. We also learned about indents and also nested if else, and we also learned elif, which means else if. So I think we handled pretty much of conditioning things today, and tomorrow we'll again continue with the new topic. Till then, if you have any questions, you can just ask me in the comments, and if you'd like to share the video, I would really appreciate that. And if you like the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys with a new topic in next video. Till then, have a nice time. Goodbye.